Could we all stand for a Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments. Members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please complete one of our speaker cards in advance of the meeting and hand it to a member of staff. Anyone wishing to speak? Good. Hopefully tonight we move the meeting. We appreciate everybody here. We've had a packed house before and we seem to have gotten through it. So tonight maybe we'll get through it a little bit faster. So with that being said, we'll move into our regular agenda items. 1-1. And I do have speaker cards for this item, so if you're going to speak to this, please get your cards up here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in conclusion, all right. So what we want to do tonight is we're going to be fairly structured just to highlight the changes that you directed us to make last week and some others that have come up from our reviews and a few comments we've heard. But tonight is the night where we're really hoping that whatever amendments are made, you will adopt it and we can move forward to send it out to the cities. And so just remember that at last week's meeting, you directed us to reflect the funding changes for a 35-year measure, reference underlying state law requiring compliance by local agencies, use consistent language throughout the document related to communities of concern. There was, correcting assures versus ensures, and I think two assures survived and the rest are now ensures, because the words have different meanings, and I've learned something. And to revise the membership language of the Public Oversight Committee so that no particular organization is named other than the RTPCs and the county, but we would identify areas of interest that members will come from. So here's the chart you've seen before in terms of the timeline. We are, getting to the point where it's time to get ready to start a new measure. And if you take the 35-year expenditure plan, which raises now $3.6 billion as opposed to $3.06 billion, then the expenditure plan now has 55% to transit and other alternatives to the personal vehicle. And we updated the population year slightly to adjust for the sub-regional shares. So here's the major categories of what goes into the 3.6. You've got about $1.5 billion into relieving congestion on highways, interchanges, and major roads, and a particular thank you to Hisham, who worked all this out and took the total and broke it down by sub-region and category, and I don't want to see the size of the spreadsheet. And then the other category is the improving transportation countywide, and I wanted to go into that in a little more detail because that's where you decided to put the bulk of the money. So modernized local roads remains at 18% or 17.4 because West County gets 15%. That goes up to $628 million. The other big area that gained was in providing convenient and reliable transit services in Central, East, and Southwest Contra Costa. That goes to almost $400 million. Bus services in West Contra Costa goes to $250 million. Affordable transportation or accessible transportation for seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities goes to $180. Cleaner, safer BART grows. Reduce and reverse commute goes to 54 from 45. So basically, this is where the bulk of the increases lies. And the only other major area of increase is major streets, which is would have been in the prior chart. Okay. So next slide. I apologize for the way the numbers are lined up here, or not lined up. It was lined up on our screens pretty well. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is go through some text changes for your consideration. And you should have a new version of the TEP in front of you, I hope.
The 23rd version.
Okay. So we'll go through them by category, and then within category where it goes across more than one page number by page number. So we're going to start with accessible transportation. The first thing on page 8 is we added the words at a request of advocates that additionally poverty has risen faster in suburban areas, particularly in Solano, Contra Costa, Marin counties. Low-income populations increasingly have less access to public transit and services, and we've included a footnote for where that conclusion comes from. And then added to the next sentence the words living independently and to maintain quality of life, including for low-income residents. On page 27, these are changes I think we had discussed last week. We just added the words accessible and cost-effective for what the funding is used for. Then later on in page 27, we wanted to make it clear that in developing the accessible transportation strategic plan, which is really what will drive how these funds are allocated and the services that will be provided, we wanted to make it ensure that the participants include stakeholders, transit, and nonprofit service providers, and that we wanted a customer-focused, user-friendly, seamless, coordinated transportation system that uses these funds. And then make it clear that the plan will be based on the characteristics and ability of all system users and identify options including traditional and beyond traditional paratransit services. So what our current transit operators provide today, for the most part, is what you might call traditional paratransit service. There are advocates who believe that there may be better ways to do that, and that certainly for some segments of the population that qualifies for these services, there may be better ways to meet their needs. So without specifying what those are, we're trying to make it clear that we would consider all of those as eligible for funding.
Okay, then it's hard to remember to come back.
I'll remember. One of us will remember. We'll come back to you.
I'm the one who needs to remember that.
Well, we can all, between us, we'll all remember. This is just a reminder of what the strategic plan will do. I think we've stated this before. It has just started. Nelson Nygaard is leading the development of the study along with staff. And there was going to be a policy advisory committee and a technical advisory committee for this effort. And the hope is that this will be done by when? By the end of next year. And then the other change we made was on page 47. It's the last change. And this is really coming back to something we talked about a few slides ago, that this plan will address and direct funding to both traditional and beyond traditional paratransit. So again, just trying to stress that while we're not saying exactly how the money is going to be spent today, the intent is that it be able to cover a wide variety of current and evolving methods of getting these people from place to place. Moving on to the next category, growth management. There was a request that we reverse the order of the two sentences that are on page 30, policy number 3. So that's all this does, and then we fixed a few wordos, you might say. I think we had we've changed that to lower, and we replaced where with whether, since that was the word we intended. Anyway. Then there have been some other comments. So we've now made some other changes. And so this now incorporates what was there before. And now we're saying that jurisdictions will provide prepared reports regarding the production and preservation of housing as provided for in their annual housing element progress report. So again, we're not asking for more work. There's a request by some that they'd like to see the reports attached to the compliance checklist, and since this would be electronic, it should be a relatively easy thing to do. There's been some friendly back and forth about making sure we have the discussion regarding the Surplus Land Act correctly, and We appreciate the county's involvement and our general counsel's involvement. So what we want to say is that jurisdictions are subject to the Surplus Land Act, and that includes the disposition of surplus land, and that each jurisdiction will affirm whether it complies with the Act, and then whether it maintains an inventory of all public land that adheres to the Surplus Land Act and Government Code 50569. The reference to 50569 is new. However, it is part of the government code, and according to our general counsel, it applies to both the county and cities and towns. And it does require that they prepare an inventory of public surplus land, and they make it available to the public on request. And then the last change is just changing where to whether, which is what we had before. So I think the intent with this language is to update our understanding of what the applicable laws are and just let the jurisdictions indicate that, yes, we follow the law, or for some reason we don't. Urban limit line. We've had some good discussion back and forth, and a couple of people, organizations, including the county, pointed out the same issue, and upon reflection, we think the point they raised was a good one. In the first part of the document, in the growth management plan, there's a discussion that if your jurisdiction and you submit an application for annexation that is outside your urban limit line, you are out of compliance with the growth management plan. And then when you got to the conditions of compliance, which is in the ULL section, it said that the application had to be for an area of 30 acres or more. And there's some understanding, there's some confusion in it. It could create a loophole where you could apply for an expansion of under 30 acres, and if LAFCO approves it, you don't have to expand your urban limit line, but you're still in compliance. So in order to clear that up, in the first condition, we've said that submission of an annexation request, in this case of any size, by a local jurisdiction to LAFCO outside of an approved ULL will constitute noncompliance with the GMP. And we took out voter approved because a jurisdiction may extend its ULL by under 30 acres without going to the voters. So it's really an approved ULL. Starts out with a voter approved, and if it's more than 30 acres, the voters have to approve it. We didn't change the second one, and then, as we said at the last meeting, we added this third category where a third party submits the request, and we've made that same change with respect to size there. So this, if anything, just tightens up the tightens up the requirement and makes it a little bit clearer. So again, thank you to the county and Save Mount Diablo for their input on that. Transit policy, we had at the first paragraph here that we wouldn't fund construction of any transit capital project until the project sponsor demonstrates how the project would increase ridership or contributes to the authority's goals to reduce VMT per capita and greenhouse gas emissions countywide. Our mistake, we forgot to get direction from you at the last meeting as to whether you want us to include all of that, so we've taken it upon ourselves to give you a recommendation, which is that we would limit this to the project sponsor demonstrating how the project would increase ridership and or decrease VMT, and not mention greenhouse gases. The example that was brought up at the last meeting dealt with transit operators are under some requirement to electrify their fleets. I understand that. It is not clear that the voters believe that, who support making their commutes faster, think that electrifying buses is the right way to do that. And if that's a state mandate, one reaction is let the state pay for it, rather than us stepping in and bailing them out. So we have taken out the reference to GHG. Later on, some future composition of the authority could change that, but at this point, our recommendation is that you take it as stated in the bottom paragraph. Public Oversight Committee. In the prior version, we had carried over the ability of certain organizations to nominate members from Measure X. And we got a request to add members in 4 more interest areas. You supported that. And then there was the concern that, well, some organizations got to nominate a member and other organizations had to go through some process. So the direction at the last meeting was take out the reference to all the nominating organizations, list the interest areas, which is what we've done here. And so we now have, I think it's 14 interest areas. And the 12 people have to be in an interest area, and certainly some of the RTPC members and the county member may serve other interest areas. Then in terms of the process to do that, select them, we will consult with public and active interest groups to solicit, identify nominees, and then they can nominate POC members that represent the areas listed above. As a public agency, our recommendation is that you have a public application process. You post essentially the application on the website. You reach out to the organizations that you think could nominate high-quality members, and then the authority needs to create a process to review the applications, and that may include interviews, and then appoint. Because there's another part of this that I didn't put on here, but just states what was here before, is that the authority appoints the Public Oversight Committee members. And there is a request that an interest area will be represented by no more than 1 POC member, because I think some were concerned that some future authority might take those 14 categories and appoint 6 from one of them. So and that was never the intent. And then the last one is we had some requests to include other criteria in the analysis of performance-based projects, and those specifically were impact on displacement and affordable housing. Our proposal last week was that those be included as criteria that may be required in the evaluation dependent upon the specific needs and purpose of the project. Some of our advocacy groups have come back and really said it was important to them that we put those as listed criteria, recognizing that in some cases the impact will be 0, so that there will be nothing that needs to be mitigated or nothing that's created in terms of affordable housing or lost. So we're going to leave this one to you because that's the last slide. So thank you. So I think Commissioner Abelson had a comment about an early slide related to...
Well, my assistant here is going to help me remember here. Sort
Page
of.
47?
Oh, I had thought it was 24.
No, it's item 24.
It's either
Item 24 on
page
page
47, thank you. There were actually a couple things. The first one actually had to do with a statistic that goes against what I've been told many times locally at AC Transit meetings, which had to do with the makeup of the riders of AC Transit. And I've been told a number that I think is around 90% of the riders are low income on AC Transit. I don't know if anybody here from AC Transit could back me up or tell me I'm wrong, but that's the number I've heard. And I actually am a bus rider.
Right.
I'm a real person that rides real buses, and I would say that that sounds right, based on what I just sort of loosely see, and not that you can 100% tell, but that's what it looks like is going on. So I'm wondering on that, where that impacts anything, if we couldn't perhaps do it more by bus operator or something, I could understand that in another area it might be different. And I'm just wondering if we couldn't organize anything based on that. I have noticed here that we've talked about safe rather than serving
people on low incomes. In my area, we like to serve students, for example, with free bus tickets, low-income students with free
Right.
bus tickets, and it's being listed as safe, which is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our kids to school to get them educated. So I'm wondering if we could somehow break that down by operator.
We
Or
could,
part
I
of
would
the
say, I will
county?
just say that adds, at least a couple of paragraphs to the document, and it is information we do not have tonight, so I need advice from our general counsel as to whether we could adopt the TEP tonight, if that was a change you wish
Well,
to
and
make.
I got to ask, where's this 90%? I'm not finding that anywhere.
No, that's
Yeah.
a number that I've been told at meetings that I go
Okay.
to regularly.
So why would we break this down by provider? I don't
Oh,
understand.
no, what I heard here was some other numbers that sounded really different. And what I'm concerned about is that we might change the way that we allocated funds based on that. No, we would not do that. Okay, that's what
No, we're not
that's
gonna
what I was
change
concerned.
how funds are
So
allocated.
West County will still get what it gets, and it can still use
Right.
it for
Right.
So
people on low incomes.
the language here on page 8, it's kind of, I know we're looking at specific paragraphs, but in terms of overall context, this is just one of the 6 points that are building the case of why we need another sales tax measure.
Okay, if
So
it's on.
that's the context. There's nothing here in
Okay.
terms of why, in terms of distribution of funds, or it's a simple reference of building the case for another expenditure plan or another measure.
Okay, likewise, this, I'm not sure where it's located right now, but the part on paratransit, see,
This is where it's located. It's on this
It is on
page,
this
page
page
20,
too?
this page, page 27, and
Oh, that's a different
page
place.
47.
okay, anyway, they're also wondering the same thing. If different parts of the county have different needs, and are we, by the use of that new language, throwing them all into the same pot? Or are we allowing them to serve residents with different needs?
We're clearly, in fact, encouraging them to serve residents with different needs appropriately. And
how-
that could be different based upon the resident's needs, and it could be different based upon where the resident lives.
Right, that would be my point.
Right.
And
So,
then
I
how
think
would we
we're
know
trying to
that
do
looking back on this 10 years from now, is what I'm wondering. Does it say something that would make me think that that's true? Are there words in the document that say that?
Well, I think we've talked about regional allocation of the funds. We've talked about in this category, both on page 47 and page 27, that there are people who have a variety of needs, and the whole purpose of the Affordable Transportation Plan or Accessible Transportation Plan is to give those people the kinds of services they need, not essentially have a cookie cutter approach either countywide or within a region.
So in my area, what I've heard within the last month at meetings I've gone to is that a lot of the funds that would be used for paratransit at AC Transit are being used for regional center clients specifically, which is didn't used to be a standard paratransit.
So I think that is something
Right.
that
So how would those things get handled under this measure?
So first, it's going to be through the Accessible Transportation Plan that the transit operators, members of the public, and WCTAC are certainly going to be able to play a role in deciding how that should be handled. In terms of funding, the category in West County provides another $48 million for the life of the measure.
So would WCTAC be able, so the plan that we talk about that doesn't yet exist would not be prescriptive at that level? It would leave it up to the local regional RTPC or other groups to figure
That'll
those
be
things out at
determined.
the time?
That'll be determined by the plan. There's nothing in this measure that says that it will be prescriptive. If the authority, after hearing from everybody, wishes to make it somewhat prescriptive, then it has that leisure ability to do so. I think if you look at the authority's history, they're going to listen very closely to the operators and the customers and the jurisdictions in each region. Yeah,
RCTP?
yeah, our TPCs, yes.
Okay.
RPTC?
It's been a lot of meetings.
The RTPCs will be certainly weighing in on the accessible transportation plan. And the accessible transportation plan will guide the use of the funds, and so there'll be definitely a regional input and direction on those funds.
Because it's not all regions may be the same. You know, there's regional variances, and I think that we're not trying to eliminate and make everything in this county be the same.
No,
We're trying to serve everybody.
right.
Thank you.
I've got two, if I can, Don. Page 30, the GMP policy number 3, jurisdictions will indicate whether they have prepared reports. And last week it was a report. And when I looked at this thing, went back to staff, this is like a one-page report that could be attached. But if you say reports, now you're talking about, okay, every year or upon demand, or this changes this thing to me. Is there a specific reason why reports had to be in there and I missed something? That would be the first question. The second one is, I want to be clear on the ULL, page 34, conditions of compliance, middle of an annexation request by a local jurisdiction outside. Are we now doing away with that 30 acres, the 25 acres? I mean, if I make an annexation of request on 20 acres, I'm out of compliance?
No. What this says is, if you make the annexation request to LAFCO before you have extended the urban limit line by the 20
Okay.
acres, which you can do as a jurisdiction, you are out of compliance. If you extend the urban limit line first and make the annexation request second, then you are in compliance. It's a sequencing issue. And on your
And then if I might add, with regard to your question on the reports, it is just the one report to HCD, the annual housing report.
It went from singular to plural in a week. I want to be clear.
change it back to singular. Right.
All right. I see no other lights. I do have 2 speaker cards.
If I might just add, I was informed they submit 2 annual reports at the same time, 2 years' worth of reports.
All right, we'll start out with Elaine Welch, followed by Barry Bruns. And I just received more cards. Elaine and Mary.
Thank you. I've been wanting to come over the last 3 weeks, and unfortunately, my husband has been very ill and is now someone requiring accessible transportation. So it's been a whole process for me as I actually live what we're talking about. Chair Taylor and board members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to take a few minutes. I'm not asking you to change anything. It all looks good to me. But the last time I stood before you, we were talking about Measure X. It was 3 years ago, and I, as all of you, wanted that to pass so badly. And when it didn't, we all, those of us providing transportation outside the ADA, had to really figure out what we were going to do. And we've gotten really creative, but it's getting harder and harder, as you well know. I am so delighted that you are once again addressing this at a time that it is so desperately needed. We want to keep the promises we make right now to the people we're helping, and those of us like me who turned 73 yesterday on the heels of the people, thank you, who are running. I don't know why that's a congratulations, but I hope I'm a living example of aging is not an illness. Can we please stay in society and be a part of all of this? And I'm trying to do something about that. Anyhow, we are currently the only agency now in Contra Costa County that has volunteer driver programs serving the entire county. Probably many of you know Caring Hands is closing in a couple of days. We are taking on about 100 more of their seniors who need weekly or slightly less frequently door-through-door transportation. So my agency is growing and growing and growing without additional funding. And thank God I have 200 volunteers who give up their time. I don't know what we would do without them, obviously. Let's see. I want to make this very short. We are now, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of this, we'll be the only agency right now that will be receiving referrals for seniors and veterans who need door-through-door transportation, who cannot take ADA, cannot take the bus, cannot do those kind of things. And we're not caregivers, but we are providing elbow assist, almost pulled on here, providing elbow assistance to get them through the door, to wait there for them, take them back safely into their home, which is what they need in order to not go into nursing facilities or not go into long-term institutions just because they got old. And it was more inconvenient for us to keep them out in the public. One size definitely does not fit all. We are great partners with the ADA and County Link, with everybody. Every part of the county has been amazing working with us. Lots of cross referrals, lots of working together. It takes a village. Not any one of us can do this. If we just had volunteer driver programs, that wouldn't work. If we just have paratransit, it doesn't work. It takes all of us. And I just want to say, everyone living is aging, and everyone in this room at some point in time is going to need some help with your mobility. I stand before these young guys at some meetings and I hear them talk about, they think they're going to drive themselves to their own funeral. It's not going to happen, okay? And I just want to say, from an old lady in this county who hopes to live here and continue to age here, please, end of my sentence, I need to get off my knees and stop being a professional beggar. It's getting hard for me to get up. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you.
Who's after her?
And Paul and Mary will be Haley.
I really want to echo everything that Elaine said. She stole a little bit of my thunder, because I was going to mention that the alternative to aging is passing away. So that which we are building now that serves the people we serve will also serve your families and will eventually serve each one of us in this room in some fashion. So I'm very happy that my associates made recommendations to change some of the wording so that we would fund non-traditional programs as well as ADA paratransit programs. So I'm really here to ask you to support those changes so that we have person-centered transportation, that we can help those that can't handle paratransit because they are incontinent, they have mental, disabilities that don't allow them to be in new and changing situations with every ride. So the advantage of some of our smaller programs is that we can make it fairly person-centered. So it would be lovely if some of the funding came to some of the cities, to some of the smaller programs, because we take some of the load off of paratransit and we're able to serve the needs of the most needy folks in our communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Haley, followed by Dave Severy.
Good evening. I'm Haley Currier, Greenbelt Alliance, East Bay Regional Representative. I am grateful, so grateful once again to the time and tireless effort of the CCTA staff and working with our coalition of equity and environmental advocates. Their work and your support have brought us here to repeat my comments from last week. You have heard our asks and worked with us in good faith. I am excited to see in the TEP ambitious greenhouse gas and VMT reduction targets with an innovative and trailblazing plan of a VMT mitigation program. A strong, diverse public oversight committee with a fair allocation of representatives, and a prioritization for public input in the creation of the performance-oriented criteria that we have talked so much about, a consideration of the impact of and connection between transit and housing and the particular needs of low-income residents in the county, the identification of communities of concern, and the prioritization of their needs as funding is allocated. There's a variety of other elements, big and small, that show progress from Measure J and Measure X. per the countless conversations between our coalition, CCTA staff, and the board. If you maintain the language as is, I am prepared to recommend a position of endorsement to the Greenbelt Alliance board. Given the structure of a public meeting, we're not able to negotiate, obviously, here tonight, so I'm looking forward to supporting the language in the TEP as it is. I look forward to learning more about the greenhouse gas and VMT modeling that is still being done, and how that will show that this plan is meeting the very ambitious and exciting goals laid out in it, and to working with the board to develop the details of this plan, including the performance-oriented criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, followed by Joanne.
Hello, my name is Dave Severy. I'm here on behalf of Transform and also a West County resident. I want to start up by thanking the CCTA staff and commissioners for all of your work on this measure and also your willingness to collaborate with this coalition. As a resident of Richmond and a regular bike, bus, BART, and occasional ferry commuter, I believe that this is a really important step towards expanding the ways in which residents get around the region while promoting thriving, walkable, bikeable communities. Our county, while large, geographically and politically diverse, we have some amazing transportation infrastructure. I'm grateful for the many Class 1 trails. I regularly ride the Ohlone and Richmond Greenways, as well as the Bay Trail, in addition to the Canal and Delta De Anza trails. These resources are essential to connecting residents and families to open spaces, jobs, and transit, and appreciate all of the work that Bike East Bay does as part of this coalition to help advocate on this front. And as an advocate for equity and social justice, the stated intentions about protecting communities of concern and stopping displacement of vulnerable families and low-income residents are much needed in the debates surrounding transportation and regional planning. This measure would set a unique and vital precedent for the Bay Area region and beyond. It is exciting that this plan will bring more public transit options closer to the front doors of residents living in underserved neighborhoods with the least amenities. And it will alleviate the public health issues of pollution and poor air quality that are especially prevalent in West County by reducing traffic congestion and vehicle miles traveled along the I-80 and San Pablo Avenue corridors. We need to reduce climate change emissions in the areas that have been most impacted historically. Lastly, as a father of a 2-year-old, I'm grateful for this proposal's goal to improve safety for young people, for cyclists and pedestrians through the mitigation of vehicle traffic injuries, the inclusion of Vision Zero and Complete Streets principles for any new project is a critical component of the TEP measure. So I look forward to continue working with you and the coalition and to ensuring that we bring the strongest possible measures to voters next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne, followed by my last speaker card, Marty.
Good evening. Thank you, CCTA staff and commissioners, for all of your hard work on this measure and the process of community input. It's no easy task to put such a complex transportation plan together. I am the interim co-executive director at Transform with my colleague Ann Chang, and I'm also a Contra Costa County resident. I'm proud to see the CCTA putting together a plan that is dollars towards transit, housing, climate equity, and incentives for anti-displacement. The decisions you make today will affect the region for multiple generations. I live in Richmond in a neighborhood where families of multiple generations have been able to afford to live on the same street. With so many families being displaced in the Bay Area, I think it's really rare to find a place where grandparents and their children who are now grandparents are able to live side by side. As a regular BART rider who witnesses the number of cars on the daily commute on Highway 80 from Richmond to Oakland, it is clear to me that the better the access to public transportation infrastructure and facilities, the more the residents will put this to use. The flexibility of this measure, based on performance metrics, allows the CCTA to address needs when it arises and is a model for how measures can be set up. The Public Oversight Committee piece is a powerful part of this measure. CCTA is signifying to your community residents that our needs matter and that you're investing in people who normally may not have a formalized place to influence Measure dollars. Contra Costa was a trendsetter for passing Measure J. And this measure today is an opportunity to continue to show our region that Contra Costa will continue to push our area forward as an innovative leader. Thank you for addressing transit and housing, because being able to access affordable and efficient public transportation and affordable housing is a combination that is really critical and important for transit-dependent riders. The more we invest in affordable housing and transit access, the more people are not getting displaced, because when we invest a lot of dollars into transit, but people are being displaced anyway, then that combination doesn't work very well. In addition, it helps to reduce greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled when people are living closer to transit. So I and Transform are so excited to be here to support this plan and share in the opportunity to establish a precedence with this measure. We want Contra Costa County to lead the way with this transportation plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty, and that was my last speaker card. That's a switch. Well, okay.
Hi, good evening. I'm somewhat of a reprise from last week. Marty Roach, I'm from Moraga. I'm with 350 Bay Area. I also work closely with 7 of the other groups that signed the coalition letter through the Contra Costa Climate Action Network. And I just want to express, short and brief words, a lot of appreciation for the work that's gone on here and how our ideas were listened to. I'm quite excited at the prospect of what can happen here. I was talking with some of the commissioners last week after the meeting, and we kind of got into a little rift. I know there's a lot of excitement here about technology innovation that's possible within the structure and the goals of this plan, but there's also social innovation that's possible. So I think there's lots of room for creativity, for reducing congestion, as we also address reducing VMT and greenhouse gas emissions. That's my mantra. We know that we have to go farther, faster, and every entity, every government entity needs to play its part. So I'm deeply appreciative. I think if the wording stays, all the groups that I'm working with are going to go back and be pretty excited about getting endorsements. I also will just add that I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the modeling study and the VMT mitigation program, which is not sketched out yet, is a real important piece, and I look forward to hearing more about the details of that as it unfolds. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, and for the persons out there, the audience, and other persons that are interested. I'm not ready to turn over the board yet. He'll get his chance. But what I want to say is that we've come a long way. If you look out in this room, when she said there was rifts, there were drifts and ocean waves, etc. But I do want to say that a lot of hard work through the board, through all the negotiation, all the various groups. So speaking as the chair of the board, I really feel appreciative that we've come this far. And just the speaker cards we used to have compared to the speaker cards we had tonight, big difference. So with that being said, I'll now come back to the board, and I will see Newell.
Well, I ditto everything you said, Bob. I think that was perfectly said. I'd like to make the motion, and I tell you why, for 2 reasons. To build a little a momentum here of what our job is. I represent the 19 cities. I'm also from South County. We need all 19 cities on board for this. We need South County. To add what Chair Taylor said, this is a better measure than Measure X. And what I heard through the process in the coalition was really talking about ideas. People were arguing about money last time. I think we talked about policies and ideas, and the money follows in proportion to those goals. I think there's more creative ideas. There is something for every jurisdiction on all levels. So if you liken this to a car, which we're going to get rid of eventually, this measure is running on all cylinders. And its goal is to get rid of those cylinders and come up with alternative ways to move people, goods, and services in safe, environmentally friendly ways, in ways that is good for all of us. But it also allows us, because it's a 35-year measure, the ability to pivot by some future board, none of us will be here 20, 30 years from now, to be able to look at what is out there, what are the needs, what has changed. And in the past, we have locked in everything so much, so tight, you do it and you sit back and just watch. I think this is really the only transportation proposed plan of its kind in the Western United States that is more forward-thinking, more progressive, and has real solutions that are based on quantifiable outcomes. Our voters need this. The San Ramon Valley, who did not vote for this, unfortunately, the last time in Measure X, I think clearly will see the benefits of this and how I-80, and a lot of I-80 solutions are both transit and technology, and it will be able to demonstrate both of those. It has extended our customized bus service for our traffics program. It has the opportunity to do a customized bus program that's similar to how we pick up school bus kids, to pick up people trying to get to their park and ride, where we have hundreds and hundreds of buses that can't get in because there's not enough parking. I support all of the changes. No more changes. We're done. This is perfect.
So is that your motion?
I'd second with the one change, if I may, from reports to report.
No, there are.
Well, it needs to be reports.
Well, I think we should include a biannual checklist, and there are 2 reports. One
And
for
you do
each year.
2-year
In
cycles.
each checklist.
Oh, you guys are so. It's the great leadership that has brought us to this point.
Thank you very much.
That was a yes.
Okay, is that a second?
Yeah.
Hudson, right?
Yeah.
All right. Were you getting ready to say something?
I was just going to mention the other day, I was reading that Contra Costa County has the largest percentage of what they call super commuters in the Bay Area. Those people who are driving 90-plus minutes a day one way to get to their jobs every morning. And it's growing. And hopefully this measure will help us address those super commuters so we can reduce that percentage and be more in line with the rest of the Bay Area. So I'm excited about this and moving forward. And East County was another area that probably has a large percentage of those super commuters are coming from East County, from Oakley, Brentwood, Antioch, and headed into Silicon Valley. I don't know how they make that commute, but hopefully we can find ways of alleviating a lot of those issues and problems.
So I do have a first and a second, and everyone in the audience are going to be super voters. You can see that, and everyone you're going to chat with will be super intrigued and super motivated. That's going to be the word of the evening, super. So with that, I will call for a vote. Hold on, for a vote. All in favor?
Mr. Chair.
Aye. Opposed? So was that unanimous? Yes. Okay. Wow. All right, let's go to 1.2.
Mr. Chair, if I could, me over here, I just want to take this opportunity, and I'm sure you all do too, to thank our staff.
Oh, yeah.
They worked so very, very hard. I don't even think any of us who understand and know how staff work can truly appreciate that. And of course, that goes to Mr. Tatson also. But everybody here who's a CCTA employee, you all did your part. I know you worked late. I know you worked weekends. There are just not enough words or accolades. And if we could find a way to do that, but please know that we truly, truly appreciate all the hard work that our staff did to come up with this wonderful plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Also, something interesting happened. I want to call out Terry Ann. If anybody remembers the day we hired Terry Ann, she was working on the last initiative. And her first day of work, I think she had to call her husband, call her family, and said, I don't know what mess I'm in, but I'm not coming home for days. But it turns out, here we are, 10 years later or whatever it is? Yeah.
No, we hired her on Leap Day, February 29th, almost 4 years ago. So it's going to be her first year anniversary here next leap year. So she's hoping for that first performance appraisal and the first raise. So we're excited.
But anyway, we are right. We do extend everyone that helped us on this. Don Tatson.
Since you were thanking staff, I also wanted to say I had a fair amount of involvement in Measure X, and a fair amount of involvement in this one, albeit from the other side of the dais. And I just also want to compliment staff for the way that I think this might have been Tim's first transportation expenditure plan. And he was just superb, as was the support from all the other staff members. it's very impressive to watch it sort of somewhat from the inside, knowing what it looks like from the board side. So again, my compliments to staff, and thank you for allowing me to ease into retirement.
Thank you, Don.
All right, Dan. All right, Mr. Hale, are you doing 1.2?
Excuse me, Bob.
I am doing 1.2.
Oh, may I?
Hold on, I'm sorry.
May I? So before all of the stakeholders and members of the public who leave the room, since we're doing the Love Fest and thank yous to everyone, I do, on behalf of the authority, want to also thank all of the partners, the people who have worked with us and with staff through this to get to this place tonight, and to remind us all that now the hard work begins. And so we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Tim Hale, you ready?
I am ready, but before I start, I just want to thank CCTA staff. Because this wouldn't have been possible without the teamwork behind the horsepower behind all of us at CCTA, Randy, Hisham, Lindsay, Martin, Matt, James Hincamp, Terry Ann, everyone, Fifi, everyone had a hand in this, and there was no way we would have been able to get here tonight without everyone here, and so it's a real pleasure to work with such an amazing team. So thank you, everyone, for being amazing. So on 1.2, I'm here before you to discuss some administrative items. So the first item is to adopt an ordinance that essentially takes the growth management program as it is today and urban limit line compliance and Measure J, and that gets replaced, conditionally amended by the growth management program, then urban limit line compliance that's in the current 2020 transportation expenditure plan, with the amendments that are on this screen that you just approved as part of 1.1. And so I'm asking for authorization for the chair to adopt ordinance 1901 to conditionally amend the growth management plan.
I do have a question. We're not going to fail, but in that really weird universe, by us adopting this, does we go forward with this in the future, even if the measure isn't passed because it's that? No, we won't. Okay, this is
conditionally amended.
Okay.
Conditionally amended.
That's what I thought. I'll second. Or
No, you first.
I'll move it.
You're first.
I'll move it.
Julie.
So who moved it?
Yeah.
The second, Karen.
And you're the second, Karen? So we have a first and a second. Is there any more discussion? Julie? You got your light on, so,
Yeah, I firsted it.
okay. And you can't second it.
No.
So we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? 1.3, which we
So-
couldn't do without 1.1.
So 1.3 we actually can't do without 1.1 or 1.2. So based on your approval of 1.2, as you all know, one of the requirements is that we must seek resolutions of support of the majority of the cities of the majority of the population of the county, as well as support from the County Board of Supervisors. In your handout as 1.3 is the schedule of all of the city council meetings and Board of Supervisor meeting that's been scheduled to hear CCTA staff to provide a briefing or a presentation on the TEP, and then seek their support of the transportation expenditure plan. And so with this item, we are asking your approval to circulate the draft 2020 transportation expenditure plan with the amendments that you approved tonight to the cities and Board of Supervisor.
Move approval.
I have a first.
Second.
I have a second. Is there any more discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. All right, correspondence, communications. Probably have it here. Anything? Executive?
Just quickly, Commissioners, we've been asked to make a presentation to the Conference of Mayors. I know Peter Engel is on September 5th agenda in the evening. He was heartbroken that he had to delay his presentation about the EV readiness plan, but Tim and I will be at the next Conference of Mayors to kind of go over give a briefing on the TEP.
That'll be greatly appreciated at the mayor's conference, tell you that right now. Julie had something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as vice chair and sort of Bob's left hand here, bugging him with who's up to speak next. I just wanted to say thank you to all of our staff. Huge kudos to Don. I tell you, he has seen it all from both sides now, and I don't know which one's easier, but he's proven that it was absolutely the right choice for this job. And to all of the coalition members and stakeholders and individuals who gave us feedback and had really, really good suggestions and ideas and challenged us to make this a really transformative and responsible measure. I want to say a huge thank you. And to echo what Teresa just said, now the hard work really begins. So thank you all, and maybe a little celebration cheer outside when we can lose some of the decorum.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
No, we're trying to adjourn.
I know, but I'm going to hold you up for a second for a very good reason. That, the person who's been sitting in the middle there, Mayor Bob Taylor, has done an extraordinary job. And actually, it's his personality that keeps it real. He can add humor to things when we're all kind of tense and angry and things. Bob, you did an outstanding job. On behalf of all of us, we want to say thank you for guiding us through this.
Any other kind words? No. Anyway. Yeah.
I always have kind words for you, but my question is, I see that item 3.0 is our adjournment. Are we having both a regular board meeting and a special board meeting on September 18th? Or just a special?
That's what it says.
Well, it says a special,
yes,
but it doesn't
yes.
say,
We are having
it does say immediately following. So sorry.
So we are having a regular and a specialty. I forgot to mention next steps, but so we have 3 more special meetings. September 18th, we'll talk about the traffic performance analysis, as well as some more administrative items such as the ordinance, draft resolution, draft ballot language that we'll be bringing forward to the board for discussion on September 18th. That conversation will continue to October 16th, where October 16th we'll be hearing about the economic analysis that's being done by Bay Area Council. And then we will then take a final vote on all of this administrative items after we hopefully get the support from the cities and the county by October 30th to then move it on to the Board of Supervisors to call the election in November.
We're adjourned. But wait,